Hello and welcome. Today I have with me Katie Taylor of the Latte Lounge. I have been waiting for this for a very long time, Katie. We've been we've been toing and froing for a while with so many things happening in our lives, and I'm so delighted that we've finally got together to make this podcast because I have been wanting um, my listeners to be able to hear your story, to hear the amazing work that you have been doing and are doing, continuing to do. Because I think um, I'm really inspired by what you do and what impact you've had on the world of menopause today. So, Katie, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And I'm sorry it's taken us so long to get
Oh,
around to doing this, but it's very kind of you to have me.
oh no, thank you. So, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us kind of who you are. Tell us a bit about the Latte Lounge. Off you go.
Sure.
Yeah, let's hear your story.
Well, I'm 53 years old now, but rewind 10 years to when I was 43. I've got four children. At the time, they were young children, and I was a very kind of busy mum, but very capable. I'd sort of walk the kids to school. I'd go to work. My job was as a communications manager for a children's charity. And then I'd obviously come home, pick up my kids, make dinner, sort the family out, and that was my routine, and I really had a very happy life. Yeah, I've got a very understanding, patient husband of almost 30 years now, and life was pretty good. But then what happened was, over the next sort of 4 years, so from the age of about 43 to 47, I started experiencing a whole host of what I thought were seemingly unrelated symptoms. So I started off with some really horrible brain fog. I just couldn't think clearly. I'd be going into meetings at work, I'd be looking at budgets, and it was like looking at another language. Or I'd be taking the kids to school, and I just couldn't remember the name of the teacher that they'd had for like 5 years. And then I also felt like every sort of step I took on that walk to school felt like I was climbing Mount Everest. It was such an effort. I was exhausted. I was also existing on about 3 hours sleep a night. And I became very, very depressed and teary. I also suffered from anxiety, which was something I'd never been afflicted with before, and heart palpitations, really quite frightening. And every time I went back and forth to my doctors, they said, "You're suffering with depression. You're juggling way too much. You're working. You're juggling four kids. You're not superhuman. Take some antidepressants. See if you can have some time off work, or even consider, working part-time or cutting down your hours." I tried that. My employer was very understanding, and they allowed me to go part-time. I didn't want to take the antidepressants. I didn't feel I was actually depressed. I had no good reason, that I should be. So they were kind of in a drawer. They were just kind of there, but not touched. And then I started getting very scared about the heart palpitations, and I was sent for to a heart specialist. I had to sleep with a 24-hour heart monitor on, and they could find nothing wrong with me. It was even thought maybe it was early onset dementia that was causing the brain fog. And I think, as a relatively young woman, I just found that frightening. I thought, am I going to have a heart attack? Am I going to develop dementia? Am I a hypochondriac? And I'm a doctor's daughter, and I kind of understand mostly what's going on with the human body. I've kind of just grown up surrounded by medics, and I didn't class myself as a hypochondriac. I very rarely would go to a doctor unless I literally, was was on death's door. In fact, as a young child, my dad would never let us have a day off work. We literally would have to be seriously unwell. And eventually I started putting on a lot of weight. I was comfort eating as a way to kind of cope with the low mood. And I had aching joints, really bad aching joints, to a point where I just couldn't exercise anymore. And I eventually gave up my job. I just became a hermit. I used to lie on the couch asleep most of the day. Now I didn't have hot flushes. I wasn't skipping periods, but my periods became heavier, a lot heavier, to a point where I was actually flooding, and I couldn't leave the house even if I wanted to. And I actually became severely anemic as well. And I remember going round to my father one night, and he's retired breast cancer professor. And I said, Dad, I think I'm going mad. I have no reason to be feeling so rubbish. And he said, look, you're 47. I think you should go and see a gynecologist who I work with. She also is a specialist in hormone health and has a special interest in menopause. And I know you're not having hot flushes, but just go and have a chat. Well, I went to see her, and in a matter of 10 minutes, I told her all my symptoms, and she said, well, this is classic perimenopause. Now, this was a word I hadn't heard of. She explained that we have estrogen receptors all over our bodies, and I was severely depleted. And this is why I was feeling all these symptoms. And I'm sure, for people that are listening, I can see you're nodding along, because I know, Meera, your story and mine are very similar. But to cut a very long story short, that night I went home and I kind of cried with relief that I wasn't going mad.
Yeah.
And I turned to Facebook, because at the time Instagram didn't exist, and
No.
we were all still on, Facebook. But I was following groups for mums with new babies, and I hadn't none of us had kind of progressed.
No.
And, and there weren't any groups at that time talking about what life over 40 looks like.
Mm.
So I set up a Facebook group, and I decided I was going to call it the Latte Lounge, because I think my best conversations and solutions come out of having a cup of coffee with a girlfriend in a
Yeah.
coffee shop.
I do love the name. Absolutely love it.
My kids hate it. They think it's far,
Oh,
they think it's far too sort of posh, and they
oh.
want, you know. But I look, I'm a latte lover, so what can I say? Yeah, so that was kind of the background to the Facebook group, and it grew. I mean, it was ridiculous. In the first 24 hours, I had 1,000 member requests, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not alone here. This is
No.
not just happening to me. This is happening to hundreds of women.
Yeah.
Um, and I felt very sorry for them, because they were coming to the group with all these issues to do with perimenopause, menopause, but also worries about their own, the health of their kids, the health of their parents, the health of their partners. And so I thought, well, if I put together a website, I'd given up my job by then.
Mm.
I thought, well, if I put together a website and bring together a kind of medical advisory team and a team of writers, we can support these women with evidence-based information, and then we can signpost them to the right people, the right resources. So like you and I, they don't have to struggle. Like on day one, they can get the answers they're looking for,
Yeah.
and get on with the rest of their lives. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the background.
It's just, I think it was lovely to hear the story. Sad, but lovely to hear the story. And thank you for sharing. But do you know what struck me was, as you mentioned, a similarity between your story and my story, and thousands of others. But we're all from different walks of life. We're all from different places. We do different jobs. We have different responsibilities. So we're not, menopause is not something that hits everybody in the same way, but it's something that will hit us all, will happen to us all at some stage. Okay. And that's what's really incredible, that up until now, up until, you know, literally in the last few months, you'd say, or years, maybe last year or so, menopause just was not something that was spoken about at all. And that loneliness, that sadness that you felt, the way that it made you feel, and actually it was nothing to do with you at all, as in, it was just because your hormones were changing. It's as simple as that. But the complications that come with it when you don't understand what's happening can leave people feeling, I mean, I've spoken to women, and it's really, really sad that some of them are struggling so much. And it isn't necessary, is it? I think that's the thing. It doesn't need to be that way.
Well, I think so. And I think the beauty of the Latte Lounge is that it's a community. And I think there's, I've grown up in quite a close-knit community myself. And I know the power of community is everything, because
Yeah.
if you can share a problem with someone else that knows and relates to what you're going through, that's half the problem solved. And I think what I've learned through my own journey is that the reason so many of us were misdiagnosed was because, you know, we, 20 years ago, there was, I'm sure a lot of your listeners will know this now, but 20 years ago, there was the Women's Health Initiative trial in 2001
Yeah.
that linked breast cancer to HRT. And at the time, menopausal women were doing really well on HRT. Doctors were very confident prescribing it. Well, overnight, this trial, which is actually a flawed trial and has been
Yes.
dismissed now,
Exactly.
everyone came off it and doctors stopped prescribing it and were scared to prescribe it. So you've got this whole generation of doctors and women who, first of all, are not confident with it, and second of all, are scared of it. And I
Yeah.
think, so look, our GPs are our gatekeepers to our health, and it's not their fault at
No.
all. They're
No.
just not educated in menopause. It's hardly touched on at medical school at all.
Mm, mm,
And I think once I realized that, I thought, yes, I want to help these women, but I also want to make change. I can't stand by and just help these thousands of women where there's no end game. There's got to be an
no.
end game here.
Yes, exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think what happened was I was really lucky that when I started the group, I met a lovely lady called Diane, who I'm sure you know, Diane
Yes.
Danbrink. We
Yeah.
both met through our groups. And Diane set up the Make Menopause Matter campaign and petition, which addressed the three issues that were my story and yours and so many others. And one was, menopause was never on the medical school curriculum, and it needs to be. One was we were never taught about it at school, and it needs to be. And the other is that workplaces need to have policies and support in place so women like us don't leave the workforce. So I think all this campaigning work that I've been lucky enough to do and be part of with Diane, and there's such a movement now with so many other sort of campaigns, that I think us women are pretty amazing. We're just this generation that said we're not having this.
No.
We know what's wrong. We know what we want to take, control of our own health. Hear us roar.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And you have been part of that movement. I've been lucky enough to be part of that as well. I've been lucky enough to have met so many people and been involved in so many campaigns. But people say, "Oh, it must be just so exciting." You know what? It's really lovely. But the bottom line is, somebody said to me, "Oh, when will are you going to just stop this? Is this like a phase? Are you going to stop when it all goes?" Well, it wasn't a phase when I started. It's not going to be a phase when I stop. I will keep going for as long as women will need me. But exactly like yourself, there's, we know whilst we know what's wrong, we also know what's right. We know what we are capable of as women. And as you said, the number of times people say to you, well, maybe you're just doing a bit too much, or, maybe you just need to calm down a bit with all the, how can you juggle 25 different things? And I'm thinking, hold on a minute. If I could do it before, I can do it now. I just need a slightly different structure and support and understanding of where I'm at. Things like you were saying, not being able to read the emails, or that was exactly me, and I didn't have a choice where I could say, I'm going to stop working. I run my own business. At the time, it was one business. I've now got two, but I ran my own business and I was the leader of that business. I couldn't just turn up one morning and go, I'm not coming to work, or I want to do, it was just not something that was there. So navigating that as well um, becomes becomes difficult when people around you don't understand what you're talking about. So the workplace pledges that are being made now and are coming through are amazing. And those points that you listed that were part of the campaign are now, they've been heard, and that's
Yeah.
such an incredible feeling.
Yeah, it is. Look, it's on the English school curriculum now, and hopefully, doctors, it will become a mandatory module. But we've got a long way to go, and that I
Yes.
was really fortunate to be invited last week to at Downing Street with some fantastic campaigners, including I know Dr. Arif and Nigat Arif, who I know
Yes.
you know as well. And I think one of the takeaway messages from that, and it was about all the whole women's health strategy, is that actually, we're just, women who have gone through this. We shouldn't need to be doing this. We're basically mopping up the job of someone else. And to be totally frank, I've given up 7 years of my life to do this.
Yeah.
And look, it's a privilege that I can and I want to support women, but we actually shouldn't have to.
No.
And
No.
I want to do other things. I'd love to go off and do, lots of other things before I'm, old and past it. But until then, like you, until the emails stop coming in and the stories keep coming, we'll keep doing this.
We will. Yeah, we certainly will. And you're right. That's exactly the thing. It isn't, there are so many people who, and you and Nigat and those that are in Street represent all of us who are just chipping away. There are so many people who are doing, voluntarily doing this, like yourself, like myself, voluntarily taking the time to speak to people, and do all of that work. And, it's everybody's work, um, putting it all together, as you exactly said. We shouldn't have to do it. We need community champions. We need people within the community where there is a role for them, and not necessarily voluntarily. People like you said, like you, myself, lots of others who are giving up their valuable time to do this and support others. And we're doing it because we know we want to make a difference. But like you said, I think that needs to change fundamentally in the kind of infrastructure of how women are supported for every aspect of women's health, not just the menopause.
And
Yeah.
that's why I is it 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I launched we have a flagship event which is called the Midlife Festival, and it's a week-long free online event. And the reason I did that is I wanted to actually celebrate midlife women, and what I've realized meeting women like yourself and lots of others is that we're actually, we're a curious bunch. We want to be informed and educated so that we can take control of our own health, happiness, and well-being. And so by bringing together all these sort of leading experts on this sort of free, event, that people can dip in and out of, we've had such amazing feedback, because I think so often menopause is depicted as a really depressing time and end of something. And I mean, like you, I actually feel, now I feel better than I did 20 years ago for sure. And I
Yes.
feel like I'm only getting started. I feel
Yes.
invigorated, excited, and I want to experience longevity of health and well-being so that I can, do, enjoy the
Yes.
rest of my life while I'm fortunate enough to be here.
Absolutely. And I think that it is the thing that I've learned the most, again, speaking to you today and the podcast guests that I've had before, is the incredible creativity, tenacity, resilience, curiosity, as you said, that the women I've spoken to have. And it's almost in a way there is that, and I'm not taking away from the toughness of it all and the hardship that can be there, but actually, when it's all managed and it's well and you're okay, the amount of creativity there is and that zest for life and living and the freedom that these years seem to bring, that no filter kind of thing, which is fun. Not so fun for the kids and everyone else around you, but fun for you. And actually, half the time I don't even know I'm doing it, but apparently, God, you're turning into. My mum's called Nani to the kids, but she's a nanny, so they seem to keep saying to me, "You're turning into Nani, Mum. You're just saying whatever's coming in your mouth." And I'm like, "Well, what can I do?" But there is a lot of fun to be had, as you said. There is a lot of upbeat. There's a lot to look forward to. And I think I'd like to kind of just ask you that actually. What do you feel? I know there is such a side to this. When you're going through that perimenopause, the journey you explained is a similar journey to mine. But we're kind of on this side now. And it would be, I say on this side, we've come through and we're out the other side in postmenopausal years. And for anybody kind of listening, it would be lovely for you to share what you the joys of it. What do you what is how is life looking like for you now?
Well, I think, look, for a lot of women who maybe aren't in such a fortunate position as myself, it's hard to listen to this podcast. I've got a very supportive husband who just about could manage for a while without me earning. And that isn't the reality for most women. And I'd say before I sort of talk about, what today looks like, if I could just give one piece of advice, if anyone's listening to this is feeling rubbish, just at the bare minimum, we've got a symptom checklist. Print it off, take it to your doctor, because if you can get the right support and advice on day one, you are literally avoiding the sort of 4 years of misery that I went through, and for others it have been longer.
Yeah.
Then once you've got, and it might not be that you need the medical treatment option like I did, which was HRT. It may be that you just need to perhaps, like, yourself address nutrition and fitness. But once you get to a point, hopefully, where you do start feeling like your old self, for me, it's a sense of liberation and freedom. I think my kids are getting older now. There's one's left home, is getting married this year, another two are at uni and another's working now. And I think it's kind of reconnecting with my partner and going, oh, I remember you. And
Yeah.
actually having some time for us. And that doesn't have to be, I'm not talking expensive holidays, but even if we just decide, what, sod it, let's just go into London and go for a walk or go for a meal or go and see a show, or stay out all day because we don't have to rush back for anything or worry about babysitters. And it's almost like reclaiming life pre-kids.
Yeah.
And obviously there's people that don't have children for a whole host of different reasons. Either they didn't want children or they sadly couldn't have. And I think it's a really good time to take stock of your health, because what you do now, it's never too late to be healthy. And whatever you do now, small tweaks, whether it's to your nutrition, to your diet, whether it's HRT, they're going to have a long-term effect on all of your long-term health.
Yeah.
And I've
Totally.
learned from my dad, actually, that we've got to stop being these sort of single issue fanatics, that everything is linked up. So,
Yes.
your nutrition affects everything from your bones to your brain health, to your heart health, to your gynecological health. Same with
Absolutely.
exercise. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as you say, it's that unfiltered liberation where you can just say, right, sod you lot, I'm off.
Absolutely. And putting yourself first. I think this is such an important time, again, linked to that, where if you are feeling rubbish, recognizing that you have the confidence to know you, and there is something not right with you. And don't be fobbed off. Do go back again and again, as you said. And Katie, we will share all your details, please, as we come to the end of the podcast, because I really would love people to know more about you, where to find you, and all the wonderful podcasts that you've done as well, which are really, really super useful. And it is important. But yes, like you said, it is, it is that time to focus on you, whether it's whatever that happens to look like and whatever that happens to be. For some people, it can be realizing that they're in the wrong relationship,
Yeah.
and sometimes it can be realizing that they're more in love than they were, whatever it is, or that there are friends in their life that don't really need anymore. Whatever that looks like, there is that liberation for sure. And putting yourself first, I think, definitely is what I can hear you saying. Um, Katie, as we kind of come towards the end of our podcast, there's one question I ask all our guests, and I wonder if you would um, share something, that a ritual or a routine or something that you do which has really helped you, and actually that maybe some of our listeners may find useful and actually be able to do as well. Let's help them feel more energized, a bit more kind of calm, whatever it would be. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was hounded for 10 years by my kids to get a dog, and I've always been scared of dogs. I've never wanted one. I'd never understood why my friends are obsessed with their dogs. I caved in 7 years ago, and I have to say it's the best thing I've ever done on so many levels. First of all, our dog is the glue for the family. No matter what mood anyone is in, you cannot help but be happy and smile when you're around your dog. Second of all, it forces me to walk every single day, rain or shine. I have to walk. the dog needs walking. And the thought of it, especially on a horrible rainy day, is like, oh, I really wish I didn't have to do this. But the second I get out of that front door and I walk, and even if it's just 20-25 minutes, I just feel so much better, because if I'm on my own, I'm just thinking calmly, I'm, looking around, enjoying nature, or listening to a podcast. If I'm with my husband or my kids, we're chatting, and it's just very, very therapeutic. And so for me, that's been the biggest change. I always swore I'd never be one of those pet owners that would allow the dog on the couch, let alone the bed. The dog now sleeps in my bed. She's even got her own pillow. Sometimes I'm on the floor in the dog basket.
Oh, I can totally get that. I can totally get that. We had a lovely schnauzer for 14 and a half years. So she was just our whole world. And it's so interesting that you say the glue that holds a family together. And actually what's really interesting is not having her around. It's only been a couple of weeks now that since since she passed away, but not having her around has left this void in the house where we're all looking at each other, and my husband and I don't really bicker. We don't fight. We just don't. Um, but we're starting to bicker. We're starting to have this, like, and my daughter came around the other day and she said, "Mom, the house feels so different. Doesn't feel right." So yes, you that is such a lovely thing to do. I think that whole idea of that fresh air, going out every day, is one of the things that many of our podcast guests have actually mentioned, and I think that cannot be understated.
Yeah.
The
And it's
importance.
free. It costs nothing to go for a
Costs
walk.
absolutely nothing. Absolutely. That really is the best thing. Katie, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. I knew this was going to be something that I wanted the listeners to be able to hear, and hear your story and hear what work you've done, amazing work that you're doing. Um, would you just share where people can find more about you, where they can find the Latte Lounge and all the things that you do?
Sure. So it's lattelounge.co.uk is the website. The podcast is called Midlife and Menopause Uncovered. And the Midlife Festival is themidlifefestival.com. And that's happening this October for a week. And we also do a lot of work in the workplace. We do a lot of sort of corporate work, help writing policies and awareness events. But you can find everything about us. And we also have a private membership, for those who are really struggling that want some one-to-one support. But it's all on the website.
That's
Yeah, and
perfect.
I'm on Instagram like you,
Yes, you are.
at Lounge the Latte.
Perfect. And you're on TikTok too.
Well, we're dipping our toes in it. I don't love it. I'm too old, but my teenagers
Oh
dip with
gosh.
me.
You're never too old. Never too old. I don't like using those words. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
I found you on TikTok. So I was like, oh, this is good. I love this. Yeah. Yeah.
it's not great, but look, it all began on the Facebook group.
Yes.
That's where the real community is. So if you need support, come and join the Facebook group, because that's where we chat every single day, and you
Lovely.
won't feel alone for sure.
No, no, that's wonderful. Katie, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been absolutely lovely and definitely worth the wait
Yeah,
for sure.
thank you for having me.